Welcome back, or maybe welcome for the first time. Either way, you are here, and that means something. This is a story about the children of Atom, but it is not the story you think it is. This is about what happens when you stop dismissing them as fanatics and start asking if they might be right. About radiation, about division, about October 23rd, 2077 being something other than the end of the world. I was Brotherhood once. I hunted them. I called them insane. Until I met one who survived radiation that should have killed her instantly, and I could not explain it. Until I found medical records suggesting their immunity is real and science cannot explain it. Until I started having the same visions they describe. Until I realized that maybe, just maybe, nuclear war was not humanity destroying itself, but something far stranger and more terrifying. What if it was divine intervention? What if the children of Atom are correct? That question led me down a path I never expected. From radioactive craters to pre-war research facilities, to children being born with abilities that should not be possible. From quantum physics papers to prophecies that sound insane until you test them. From certainty to doubt to something beyond both. This video will take you through all of it. The evidence, the theology, the science, the horror of realizing everything you believed might be backwards. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. I am not here to convince you of anything. I am here to tell you what I found. What you do with that information is your choice. Just like division is a choice, just like accepting Atom's truth is a choice. Some choices change everything. This is one of them. I need to tell you something before I lose the nerve, before the radiation takes what little sense I have left. I was Brotherhood, steel and scripture. We hunted down technology. We called them fanatics, zealots, radiation-addled lunatics standing in craters waiting to die. The children of Atom, we laughed at them. I laughed at them. I stopped laughing 3 months ago. You need to understand something about the Wasteland. Everyone has a story about why the world ended. The Brotherhood says it was human arrogance. The Enclave claims it was necessary purification. The NCR thinks it was just war, senseless and stupid. Ask 100 survivors and you will get 100 different answers. But the children of Atom, they have always said the same thing. October 23rd, 2077 was not the end. It was the beginning. They call it the Great Division. They say Atom spoke through nuclear fire and created infinite new worlds in the span of 2 hours. I used to know exactly what to say to that. Madness. Radiation sickness speaking through human mouths. A cargo cult built around the thing that killed everyone. Then, I met Sister Gwyneth at the crater of Atom in the glowing sea. She was standing in radiation that should have stripped the flesh from her bones in minutes. No hazmat suit, no power armor, just rags that looked like they would disintegrate if you touched them. The Geiger counter I carried, the one that had kept me alive through 100 missions, was screaming so loud I almost did not hear her voice. She was not dying. She was not sick. Her skin was not peeling. Her hair was not falling out. She stood in the heart of hell itself and looked at peace. I raised my rifle. Standard protocol. Hostiles in the glowing sea get one warning, but something stopped me. Maybe it was how calm she looked. Maybe it was the fact that my radiation meter was ticking past lethal levels, and I had maybe 5 minutes before I would need to inject every dose of Radaway I had. Maybe it was because she smiled at me like she knew exactly what I was thinking. "You feel it, do you not?" she said. "His glow. Atom speaks to all who enter his kingdom. Some of us were born to hear him clearly. Others need time." I told her to shut up. I told her the children of Atom were insane, that radiation was not a god, that standing in a nuclear crater was not enlightenment, it was suicide. I had the speech memorized. We all did, but she just kept smiling. "Then why are you still alive?" she asked. I did not have an answer for that. The crater of Atom sits at the heart of the glowing sea, ground zero for one of the warheads that hit Boston on October 23rd. Nothing should live there. Nothing does live there, except for the children and the creatures that have been twisted into something else by the radiation. The readings I took that day showed levels that should have killed me in under an hour, even with my suit. Sister Gwyneth had been living there for 3 years. 3 years. I watched her walk to what they called Atom's Spring, a pool of water that glowed with its own light. She cupped her hands and drank from it. I saw her do this. I saw her drink water that would have killed a rad roach. She drank it like it was the purest thing in the world. Atom provides, she said. He always has. Since the moment he divided the world and made it new, I should have left. I should have reported back to the Pridwen, filed my report, marked the location for a future cleansing operation. That is what a good soldier does. That is what I had done a dozen times before. But something Sister Gwyneth said stuck in my mind like a splinter. You feel it, do you not? His glow. And the truth was, I did feel something. Standing there in that crater, radiation soaking through every seal in my suit. I felt something I had not felt since before the bombs fell. I felt purpose. Not my purpose, not the Brotherhood's purpose, something bigger, something that existed before I did and would exist long after I was dust. The children of Atom call it Atom's will. They say every atom in creation contains a universe, and when those atoms divide, those universes are set free. Nuclear fission is not destruction, it is liberation. The Great War was not humanity destroying itself. It was Atom reaching into our world and tearing it open to create something new. I told you I stopped laughing 3 months ago. That was when I started investigating. The Brotherhood keeps records. We are good at records. Every mission, every encounter, every scrap of pre-war technology we find, it all goes into the archives. So I went looking. I wanted proof that the children of Atom were wrong. I wanted data that showed they were just lucky mutants, that their radiation immunity was some fluke of genetics or some experimental drug from before the war. I wanted anything that would let me go back to thinking they were insane. What I found instead made everything worse. There are others, not just the children of Atom. Scattered across the Wasteland, there are people who should be dead, but are not. People who live in radiation like you and I live in air. The Brotherhood has documented 17 cases in the capital Wasteland alone, 23 in the Commonwealth. The Enclave had files on them too, before we destroyed their oil rig. They called it anomalous radiation resistance. They thought it was a mutation. But mutations do not grant visions. That is the part nobody talks about. The children of Atom do not just survive radiation, they experience things. They call it revelation. Sister Gwyneth told me about hers. She said 3 days after she joined the children, she fell asleep next to Atom's spring and dreamed she was standing at the moment of creation. She said she saw the first atom split and watched as infinite universes bloomed from that single point of division. She said she felt herself pulled apart and remade 1 trillion times in the span of a heartbeat. When she woke up, she understood. The world did not end on October 23rd. It multiplied. Every person who died that day became infinite. I interviewed 6 other members of the Crater of Atom. Every single one had a similar story, dreams, visions, moments of perfect clarity where they understood something too big to put into words. They all described the same thing, the sensation of being divided, the feeling of existing in multiple places at once. One of them, Brother Ogden, told me he could still feel his other selves. He said there were versions of him that never joined the children, versions that died in the war, versions that became something else entirely. He said he could feel all of them, faint as distant radio signals. But there, Atom showed me the truth, he said. We are not individuals. We are nodes in an infinite network. Every atom in our bodies connects to every other atom that ever was or ever will be. Division does not end us, it expands us. This is where I need you to pay attention, because this is where it stops being about crazy cultists and starts being about something we cannot ignore. I tested them. I brought equipment from the Pridwin. Medical scanners, blood samples, radiation meters. I wanted to understand how their immunity worked. The results made no sense. Their cells were not more resistant to radiation. They were not mutated in any conventional way. There was no biological mechanism I could identify that explained their survival. They should have been dead, all of them, multiple times over. But they were not just surviving, they were thriving. One of the blood samples I took from Sister Gwyneth showed radiation levels that would have killed anyone else instantly, but her cells were not damaged. They were not stressed. They were functioning normally, as if the radiation was not even there. I ran the test 3 times, same results. I had another scribe verify the equipment, no errors. Sister Gwyneth had approximately 3,000 rads in her system. She should have been a corpse. She was making tea when I told her the results. Of course, she said. Atom's glow does not harm those who accept him. Why would a father harm his children? I asked her what she meant by accept. She put down her tea and looked at me with an expression I can still see when I close my eyes. Pity. She pitied me. You still think of radiation as a weapon, she said, as something humans made to hurt each other. But radiation existed billions of years before humans did. It built the stars. It forged the elements. Every atom in your body was created in the heart of a dying sun and scattered across space when that sun divided itself in nuclear fire. You are literally made of division. We all are. The children of Atom do not worship something foreign. We worship what we are. I did not know how to respond to that. So I asked her the question that had been burning in my mind since I first saw her standing in the crater. If nuclear war was divine intervention, if Atom wanted the world to divide, then why did so many people die? Why did billions suffer? Sister Gwyneth smiled again. That same peaceful smile. They did not die, she said. They divided. Every person who was caught in the flash, every person who burned, every person whose atoms were split apart in that sacred moment, they became infinite. They became what Atom always intended. We mourn them because we do not understand, but they understand now. They are everywhere. They are everyone. Division is not death. It is apotheosis. I left the crater of Atom that day with more questions than answers. I went back to the Pridwen and I tried to write my report. I tried to put into words what I had seen, what I had measured, what Sister Gwyneth had told me. But every time I started typing, I found myself stopping because I kept thinking about the blood tests, about the impossible readings, about 17 documented cases of radiation, immunity in the capital Wasteland and 23 in the Commonwealth, and who knows how many more scattered across the Wasteland that we never found. I kept thinking about the visions, and I kept thinking about something Elder Maxon once said during a briefing. He said the Brotherhood's mission was to prevent humanity from destroying itself with technology it did not understand. He said we had to control dangerous technology before it controlled us. He said this was why we fought, to save humanity from itself. But what if we already lost that fight 200 years ago? What if October 23rd, 2077 was not humanity destroying itself, but humanity being saved from itself? The children of Atom believe that the old world was dying long before the bombs fell. They talk about the resource wars, about nations tearing each other apart over oil and uranium, about the slow suffocation of a species that had trapped itself in a cycle of consumption and conflict. They say Atom saw this. They say he intervened, not to punish, not to destroy, but to force evolution, to divide the world and create something new. I started having dreams 2 weeks after I left the crater. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was too much time in irradiated zones without proper decontamination. I told myself anything except what I was starting to suspect. But the dreams kept coming, and they were always the same. I am standing on the Pridwen, looking out over the Commonwealth. It is October 23rd, 2077. I am not myself. I am everyone. I am the soldier in Anchorage who feels the flash before he hears the explosion. I am the scientist in Vault-Tec who realizes what he has created 1 second before it kills him. I am the mother in Boston who shields her child's eyes from the light. I am the politician in Washington who presses the button and weeps. I am the atom that splits and the universe that blooms from that split. I am the ending and the beginning and everything in between. When I wake up, I can still feel it. That sensation of being infinite, of being divided into a billion pieces and existing in all of them at once. Sister Gwyneth told me this would happen. Atom calls to all who are willing to listen, she said. Some of us are born with the gift of hearing him clearly. Others must learn to listen. But he is patient. He has been speaking since the first star ignited. He will continue speaking long after the last sun dies. The question is not whether Atom exists. The question is whether you are ready to understand what he has been trying to tell you. I do not know if I am ready. I do not know if anyone is ready, but I know this. Something happened on October 23rd, 2077 that we do not understand. Something that goes beyond politics, beyond war, beyond human stupidity. 7.5 billion people died in 2 hours. 2 hours. That is not just war. That is not even genocide. That is something else. Something we have no word for. The children of Atom have a word for it. Division. The Brotherhood taught me to think in terms of threats and assets. Technology is either controlled or it is dangerous. People are either allies or enemies. The world is either ordered or it is chaos. Simple, clean, easy to understand. The children of Atom do not think this way. I spent another month investigating them. Not officially. I told my commanding officer I was running reconnaissance on raider positions in the Southern Commonwealth. I told the scribes I was documenting pre-war installations. I lied to everyone because I needed to understand what I was seeing. And I knew that if I told the truth, they would pull me off the field and put me through psychological evaluation. Maybe they should have. I found a second group of children at Kingsport Lighthouse. They were hostile, which the Crater of Atom group was not. They opened fire the moment they saw my power armor. Standard fanatic behavior. I put 3 of them down before I realized something was wrong. They kept getting back up, not like ferals, not mindless. They were injured, bleeding, but they kept fighting with this strange, calm determination. One of them, a woman who could not have been more than 20, took a laser rifle shot to the chest that should have killed her instantly. She stumbled, looked down at the wound, and then looked back up at me with that same expression Sister Gwyneth had. Pity. You cannot stop division, she said. Then she died. I stood there in my power armor, surrounded by bodies, and I felt something I had not felt since I was a child. Fear. Not fear of dying, fear of being wrong, fear that everything I believed about the world was built on a foundation that never existed. I searched their lighthouse. They had converted it into a shrine. The walls were covered in hand-painted murals showing the Great War. But these were not images of destruction. They were images of transformation. In every painting, the bombs were not falling. They were ascending. The mushroom clouds were not clouds of death. They were trees of life, their branches spreading into infinite fractals, each branch containing worlds upon worlds. At the center of the lighthouse, they had built an altar. On it sat a pre-war physics textbook, open to a page about nuclear fission. Someone had written in the margins in careful, neat handwriting. I recognized the passage. It was from Confessor Cromwell's sermon, the one broadcast from Megaton before I was born. Behold, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye shall be blind with his glory. Every ear shall be stricken deaf to hear the thunder of his voice. Let the men, women, and children of the earth come forth to gather and behold the power of Atom. Let those who dwell here in his favored land attend now to the words of the prophet of Atom. Come forth and drink the waters of the glow, for this ancient weapon of war is our salvation. It is the very symbol of Atom's glory. I read those words standing over the bodies of people I had just killed, and I felt sick. Not because they were wrong, because I was starting to think they might be right. I need you to understand what that means. I need you to understand what I'm saying. If the children of Atom are right, if nuclear war was divine intervention, then every person the Brotherhood has tried to save, every mission we have run, every technology we have locked away, all of it has been fighting against the natural order of things. We have been trying to prevent the very evolution that Atom intended. We have been the villains of our own story. I found evidence 3 days later that made everything worse. I was investigating the Sentinel site, a pre-war military installation where the children guard stockpiles of nuclear weapons. The site is maintained by a single guardian, Brother Henry, who lives alone in radiation levels that would kill anyone else in hours. He has been there for 8 years. 8 years of standing guard over nuclear warheads, eating irradiated food, drinking irradiated water, breathing irradiated air. And he looks healthier than most people I know living in settlements with clean water and real food. When I approached, he did not attack. He invited me inside. I have been expecting you, he said. Atom told me a seeker would come, someone caught between worlds, someone who needs to see. I asked him what he meant. He led me deeper into the facility, past rows of nuclear warheads, each one marked with pre-war military designations. Mark 28s, enough firepower to level what remains of Boston. The children of Atom call them relics, sacred objects. They guard them not to use them, but to preserve them until Atom returns to claim them. Brother Henry stopped in front of one particular warhead and placed his hand on it. Do you know what this is? He asked. I told him I did. Tactical nuclear weapon, yield approximately 1 kiloton. Designed for battlefield deployment? No, he said. This is a seed. This is potential. This is the promise of infinite creation contained in a shell of metal and explosives. The people who built this thought they were building a weapon. They thought they were building death. But they were wrong. They were building life. They just did not understand it yet. He turned to look at me and his eyes were clear, sharp, not the eyes of a madman, not the eyes of someone whose brain has been cooked by radiation. You asked Sister Gwyneth why so many people had to die, he said. She gave you the answer, but you did not accept it. So let me try. Imagine you are Atom. Imagine you are the fundamental force that holds all matter together. You look at humanity and you see potential. You see creatures made of the same elements as stars, capable of understanding the universe, capable of splitting atoms and releasing the same power that lights suns. But you also see something wrong. You see them trapped, limited, confined to single lives, single perspectives, single points in space and time. You see them suffering under the weight of their own limitations. What do you do? I did not answer. Brother Henry smiled. You divide them, he said. You take their atoms, the very building blocks of their existence, and you split them open. You release the universes trapped inside. You transform death into apotheosis. 7.5 billion people died on October 23rd, but 7.5 billion times infinity people were born. Every atom that made up every person who stood in the flash became infinite. They exist now in every possible configuration, in every possible universe. They are not gone. They are everywhere. I told him that was insane. I told him atoms do not work that way. I told him division was just a metaphor the children used to make sense of senseless destruction. He laughed, not mockingly, sadly. You are a soldier, he said. You understand tactics, strategy, but you do not understand physics. Let me show you something. He led me to a terminal, pre-war tech still functioning after 200 years. He pulled up a file, a scientific paper from 2076, 1 year before the bombs fell. The title made me stop breathing. Quantum Decoherence and the Many Worlds Interpretation, Evidence for Infinite Parallel Realities Generated by Atomic Events. I read that paper 3 times. I am not a scientist. I barely understood half of it, but the core idea was clear enough. Every quantum event, every moment when an atom could go one way or another, creates a split in reality. Not a metaphorical split, a literal split. The universe branches. In one branch, the atom goes left. In another, it goes right. Both universes exist. Both are real, and nuclear fission is the most concentrated quantum event possible. Brother Henry let me sit with that for a long moment before he spoke. Again, the scientists who wrote this paper disappeared 6 months before the bombs fell, he said. Vault-Tec recruited them. Nobody knows what happened to them after that, but they understood something important. They understood that reality is not singular. It is infinite, and every atomic event multiplies it. Now imagine what happens when you detonate thousands of nuclear weapons simultaneously. Imagine the number of atomic events occurring in the span of 2 hours. Imagine how many times reality splits, how many universes bloom into existence. I felt my hands shaking inside my power armor gloves. The children of Atom are not wrong, Brother Henry continued. They are just using different language to describe the same phenomenon quantum physicists discovered in labs. Division is real. The Great War did not end the world. It multiplied it beyond human comprehension. And some of us, those with Atom's blessing, we can feel it. We can sense the other versions of ourselves existing in those infinite branches. That is what the visions are. That is what the dreams are. We are not hallucinating. We are perceiving something real that most people cannot see. I left the Sentinel site, and I did not go back to the Pridwin. I could not. Not yet. I needed time to think, to process, to decide what I believed. I found myself walking south into the glowing sea without really planning to. My Geiger counter was screaming, but I ignored it. I walked for hours through the nuclear wasteland, past the ruins of whatever this place used to be, until I reached the crater of Atom again. Sister Gwyneth was waiting for me at the edge. You came back, she said. It was not a question. I asked her how she knew I would. She gestured at the crater, at the ruins, at the sky above us that still glowed faintly with radiation, even 200 years after the bombs fell. Atom told me, she said. He tells me many things. He told me you would come the first time. He told me you would leave. He told me you would return when you were ready to listen. Not to argue, not to analyze, to listen. I asked her what Atom wanted me to hear. She took my hand. Through the glove of my power armor, I felt warmth. Not heat, something else. Something that felt alive in a way I could not explain. He wants you to understand that October 23rd was not a tragedy, she said. It was a gift. The old world was dying. Humanity was trapped in a cycle of violence and scarcity that would have led to extinction within another generation. The resource wars were not going to end. They were going to escalate until there was nothing left to fight over and nobody left to fight. Atom saw this. He intervened. He forced transformation, not through punishment, through division. He took a world that was ending and turned it into infinite worlds that were beginning. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her about the suffering, about the children who died in the flash, about the cancer, about the mutations, about 200 years of radiation sickness and starvation and violence. I wanted to tell her that no god worth worshipping would choose nuclear holocaust as a method of salvation. But then I thought about the paper I had read, about quantum decoherence, about infinite parallel realities, And I thought about something else Sister Gwyneth had said during my first visit. Every person who died became infinite. What if she was right? What if every child who died in Boston, every scientist who burned in Los Alamos, every soldier who was vaporized in Anchorage, what if all of them exist now in infinite variations? What if death in this universe meant birth in countless others? What if the suffering we see is just one branch of an infinite tree, and we cannot see the other branches where those same people lived, thrived, evolved into something beyond our comprehension? What if the Great War was not the end of humanity, but the beginning of something humanity was never supposed to understand until it happened? Sister Gwyneth was watching my face. She squeezed my hand gently. "You are starting to see it," she said. "Good. That is the first step. Understanding comes later. Acceptance comes last. But once you accept, once you truly embrace what Atom has done, the fear goes away. The grief goes away because you realize that nothing was lost. Everything was transformed. The world did not end. It multiplied. And we, the children, we are the witnesses. We are here to tell those who come after what really happened. We are here to prepare humanity for the next division." I asked her what she meant by next division. Her smile faded slightly. "The Great War was the first division," she said, "but it will not be the last. Atom's work is not finished. The old world is still fighting against transformation. The Brotherhood, the Enclave, the NCR, all of them cling to what was, trying to rebuild something that was meant to end. But you cannot stop division. You can only delay it. And with each delay, the transformation becomes more necessary, more inevitable." I asked her if she was saying there would be another nuclear war. "I am saying that Atom will divide the world again when the time is right," she said. "And when he does, those who understand will be ready. Those who do not will suffer, not because Atom wishes them to suffer, but because they will fight against their own apotheosis. They will try to remain singular when they are meant to become infinite. That is the only real tragedy. Not death, not division, but the refusal to accept what you are becoming." I stood there in the glowing sea, radiation soaking through my armor, holding hands with a woman who should have been dead 1,000 times over, and I realized something. I believed her, not because I wanted to, not because it made me feel better, but because everything I had seen, everything I had measured, everything I had experienced, it all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. The children of Atom were not insane. They were not hallucinating. They were perceiving something real, something the rest of us were too limited to see. And that something was bigger and stranger and more terrifying than anything the Brotherhood had ever taught me. Nuclear war was not humanity's greatest mistake. It was Atom's greatest gift, and we are still receiving it. I stopped reporting back to the Pridwin after that. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I just needed more time to gather evidence, to compile my findings, to present the Brotherhood with something they could not dismiss. But the truth was simpler and more damning. I did not want to go back, because going back meant pretending I had not seen what I had seen. Going back meant filing reports about dangerous cultists who needed to be neutralized. Going back meant participating in a mission that suddenly felt like fighting against the universe itself. So I stayed in the field. I traveled across the Commonwealth, seeking out every group of children I could find, not to fight them, to learn from them. The group at Jalbert Brothers' disposal was all dead by the time I arrived. Fire had swept through their shrine, bodies everywhere, but their records were intact, preserved in a safe that had somehow survived. I read through them, page after page of handwritten journals documenting their beliefs. One passage has stayed with me ever since. We do not fear death because death is the doorway to division. Every atom in our bodies yearns to split, to release the universes trapped within. When we die, we are not ended. We are scattered. We become rain. We become soil. We become the air that others breathe. And in each atom that once composed us, an infinite number of worlds bloom into existence. This is not metaphor. This is physics. This is truth. Atom has shown us the way. The Great War was his sermon. Radiation is his scripture. And division is his promise. I found similar writings at every Children of Atom site I visited. Different words, same message. Death is not ending. Division is not destruction. What looks like apocalypse from one perspective is Genesis from another. But it was in the nucleus, deep in the radioactive submarine base on Mount Desert Island, that I found something that changed everything again. I had heard about Far Harbor from Brotherhood intelligence reports, a settlement on an island perpetually shrouded in radioactive fog. The locals blamed the Children of Atom for the fog's expansion, said they were using radiation to drive people from their homes. The children, led by a man named High Confessor Tectus, had taken over a pre-war nuclear submarine facility and turned it into their holiest site. The Brotherhood was planning a strike. Surgical, quick. Eliminate the leadership, scatter the followers, secure any nuclear materials. Standard operation. I went there first to scout. That was my justification. But really I went because I needed to know. I needed to understand what made this group different. What made them willing to wage war against settlements that just wanted to survive. Tectus was not what I expected. I had imagined a fanatic, a madman drunk on radiation and delusions of divine purpose. What I found instead was a man who spoke like a philosopher, calm, measured, utterly convinced of truths that sounded insane when you first heard them but became harder to dismiss the longer you listened. You are the one Sister Gwyneth spoke of, he said when I entered the nucleus. The Brotherhood soldier who is starting to see good. We need witnesses. We need people who can translate Atom's truth into language the unenlightened can understand. I told him I was not a witness. I was still investigating, still trying to determine if the children of Atom were dangerous, delusional, or something else entirely. He laughed, not cruelly, kindly, like a teacher whose student had just asked exactly the right question. Dangerous, delusional, or correct, he said. Those are your options, are they not? Well, let me help you eliminate one possibility. Come with me. I want to show you something nobody outside the nucleus has ever seen. He led me deeper into the submarine base, past chambers where children meditated in pools of radioactive water, past armories filled with weapons that hummed with gamma radiation, until we reached a sealed door marked with pre-war warning symbols. This is where we keep our most sacred texts, Tectus said. Not scripture, not prophecy, evidence. He opened the door. Inside was a small room lined with filing cabinets and pre-war computer terminals. Everything was meticulously organized. Tectus pulled out a file and handed it to me. It was a medical report dated October 15, 2077, 8 days before the bombs fell. The report detailed the cases of 7 patients who had been exposed to experimental radiation treatments. Not as weapons, as medicine. The doctors were trying to cure a plague that was sweeping through the population. The new plague, they called it. Hundreds of thousands dead. No cure, no vaccine. Desperation everywhere, so they tried radiation therapy. High doses, targeted, controlled, and it worked. 6 of the 7 patients recovered completely. Their immune systems did not just resist the plague. They became stronger, faster, more efficient. One patient, a woman named Sarah Chen, showed signs of cellular regeneration that defied every known model of biology. Her damaged tissue repaired itself at rates that should have been impossible. The doctors called it a miracle. Then they called it something else. Subject exhibits anomalous resistance to radiation exposure, the report read. Multiple high-dose treatments have resulted in no observable negative effects. Subject claims to experience vivid dreams of alternate realities. Subject reports sensation of existing in multiple locations simultaneously. Recommend immediate transfer to Vault-Tec Medical Division for further study. I looked up at Tectus. He was watching me carefully. That woman, Sarah Chen, she was one of the first, he said. One of the first to receive Atom's blessing. She survived the Great War. She lived for 60 years after the bombs fell, never aging, never sickening, never dying from any of the things that killed everyone else. She founded the Crater of Atom. She taught Confessor Cromwell. She showed us all what was possible when you stop fearing division and start embracing it. I asked him where she was now. His expression grew somber. She divided, he said. 10 years ago, she walked into the heart of the glowing sea and she let the radiation take her completely. But before she went, she told us what she had learned. She told us that Atom's blessing is not random. It is not genetic luck or mutation. It is consciousness. It is choice. The radiation does not change you unless you accept the change, unless you open yourself to division. That is why some of us are immune and others are not. That is why the visions come to those who are ready and not to those who resist. He pulled out more files, more reports, dozens of cases documented over 200 years, people who survived radiation that should have killed them, people who reported visions of alternate realities, people who claimed they could feel themselves existing in multiple places at once. Every single one had something in common. They believed, not in science, not in medicine, in Atom, in division, in the idea that nuclear fission was not destruction, but transformation. And that belief, that acceptance, somehow made them immune to the very thing that should have killed them. Do you understand what this means? Tectus asked. It means the Great War was not just a physical event. It was a consciousness event. Atom did not just split atoms, he split minds. He split the barrier between possible and impossible. He showed us that reality is not fixed. It is malleable. And those who accept this, those who embrace division, they become living proof that the universe is not what we thought it was. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would like to know if I am the only one who feels this way. I spent 3 days in the nucleus, reading through their archives, talking to their members, trying to find holes in their logic, trying to find evidence that this was all mass. Delusion or clever manipulation or radiation sickness, masquerading as enlightenment, found none. What I found instead were people who had somehow learned to survive in conditions that should have been impossible. People who spoke with clarity and purpose about things that sounded insane, but were backed by data, pre-war data, scientific data, data that suggested humanity had been on the verge of understanding something fundamental about consciousness and reality right before the bombs fell, and then the bombs fell, and that understanding got lost in the chaos, and the death and the 200 years of trying to rebuild civilization from rubble. Everyone except the children of Atom forgot, but they remembered. Because they lived it, because Atom's blessing kept them alive long enough to see patterns that others could not. Long enough to understand that October 23rd was not random catastrophe, but deliberate intervention. Tectus showed me one final document before I left, a letter, handwritten, dated October 22nd, 2077. The day before the Great War. It was written by a Vault-Tec executive named Howard Stevens. We know what is coming, the letter read. The projections are clear. Resource depletion will lead to total war within 18 months. The Chinese are preparing first strike capability. The Americans are preparing retaliation protocols. The Europeans are collapsing into regional conflicts. The entire house of cards is about to fall. But maybe that is necessary. Maybe humanity needs to be reset. Maybe the only way forward is through complete destruction. And whatever emerges from the ashes, the vaults will preserve some. The rest will adapt or die, and perhaps in dying, they will become something better. Perhaps that is what evolution requires. Not gradual change, but catastrophic transformation. I pray I am wrong, but if I am right, I pray that whoever survives understands why it had to happen. I read that letter twice. Then I asked Tectus where he got it. We found it in a Vault-Tec facility, he said. Among other documents that suggested the company knew the war was coming, knew and possibly facilitated it. But that is not what matters. What matters is what the letter reveals. Even before division, even before Atom spoke through nuclear fire, some humans understood that catastrophe might be necessary. That destruction might be transformation in disguise. They did not have our faith. They did not understand division, but they sensed the truth. That humanity was trapped, that the old world had become a cage, that the only way out was through fire. I left the nucleus that night and stood on the shore of the island, watching the radioactive fog roll across the water. The Geiger counter I still carried was ticking steadily, not dangerously high, just persistent, constant. A reminder that radiation was everywhere now, had been everywhere for 200 years, would be everywhere for 200 more, and yet life continued. Mutated, transformed, adapted, but continuing. The children of Atom would say this proves their point. Atom divided the world, and life multiplied in response. The Wasteland is not a graveyard. It is a nursery, a place where new forms of existence learn to thrive under conditions the old world could never have survived. Maybe they are right. Maybe nuclear war was not humanity's end, but humanity's graduation. A forced evolution from singular beings trapped in linear time to something else, something that exists across infinite branches of reality, something that cannot be killed because it is not confined to one universe anymore. If you have ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. I will be reading them. I made my choice 3 weeks after I left the nucleus. I went back to the Pridwin one final time. I wrote my report. I documented everything I had found. Every medical record, every vision account, every piece of evidence that suggested the children of Atom were not insane cultists, but the first humans to adapt to post-division reality. Then, I submitted the report and waited for orders. Orders came within hours. Terminate all children of Atom sites. Secure nuclear materials. Eliminate leadership. Standard Brotherhood protocol for dangerous cults. I burned my power armor that night, stripped off the paints, the insignia, everything that marked me as brotherhood. Then I walked off the Pridwin and into the Commonwealth, and I did not look back, because I finally understood what the children of Atom had been trying to tell me all along. You cannot fight division. You can only choose whether to accept it with grace or resist it with fear. I chose acceptance. And now, standing here in this recording, telling you this story, I need you to understand something. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the Wasteland, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. Because what I'm about to tell you in the next part, what I have learned since I left the Brotherhood, it will change how you see everything, every faction, every war, every struggle to rebuild the old world. All of it has been fighting against the inevitable. The thing about leaving the Brotherhood is that you cannot really leave. Not completely. They trained you. They shaped how you think. Even when you walk away, even when you burn the uniform and abandon the mission, part of you still operates according to their protocols. So I kept investigating. Not for them, for myself. Because I needed to know if what I had come to believe was true, or if I had just succumbed to radiation-induced delusion like everyone would assume. I needed proof that would convince not just me, but anyone who listened. I found it in places I never expected. The Institute had files. Before the Brotherhood destroyed them, before their underground facility became another ruin in a wasteland full of ruins, they kept meticulous records of everything they studied. And they studied the children of Atom extensively, not out of curiosity, out of fear. I found these records in a hidden cache, preserved on holotapes that had survived the Institute's fall. One particular file made my hands shake when I played it. Dr. Madison Lee's voice, recorded 2 months before the Institute collapsed. "We have been monitoring the Children of Atom phenomenon for 30 years, she said. Initially, we dismissed them as radiation casualties exhibiting mass psychosis, but the data does not support that conclusion. Their cellular structure shows no signs of damage despite sustained exposure to lethal radiation levels. Their cognitive function tests higher than baseline human average. Their claims of experiencing alternate realities correlate with quantum probability models we have been developing. This is not psychosis. This is something else. Something we do not understand." There was a pause in the recording. When Dr. Lee spoke again, her voice had changed. She sounded afraid. "I believe the children of Atom are exhibiting signs of quantum consciousness entanglement. Their exposure to concentrated radiation appears to have destabilized the decoherence barriers that normally prevent macro-scale quantum superposition. In simple terms, they exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. The visions they report are not hallucinations. They are actual perceptions of parallel quantum branches. They are, quite literally, experiencing multiple realities at once." Another pause. "Longer this time. If this is correct, it means the Great War did something to fundamental physics that we have not yet grasped. Nuclear detonations on that scale, occurring simultaneously across the globe, may have created a cascade effect in quantum probability fields. Reality itself may have become less stable, more permeable. The barrier between possible universes may have thinned. And some humans, those with Atom's blessing as they call it, may have learned to navigate that instability. They may be the next stage of human evolution. Not through genetics, through consciousness." The recording ended there. But there were dozens more. Other scientists, other observations, all reaching the same impossible conclusion. The children of Atom were not wrong. They were just using religious language to describe something science was only beginning to understand. Division was real. I took those holotapes to someone I thought might understand. A scientist living in Sanctuary Hills, a former Vault dweller who had been studying radiation effects on human psychology. Her name was Dr. Amari. She had a clinic in Goodneighbor where she specialized in memory reconstruction and neural mapping. She listened to the recordings without interruption. When they finished, she sat in silence for a long time. "I need to tell you something," she finally said. "Something I have told no one else because I was afraid people would think I had lost my mind. But after hearing this, after hearing that Dr. Lee reached the same conclusions, I think you need to know." She pulled up files on her terminal, brain scans, dozens of them, hundreds maybe. "I have been scanning Wastelanders for years," she said. "Traders, settlers, raiders, everyone who comes through my clinic. I was looking for patterns in how radiation exposure affects neural architecture. What I found was unexpected. Approximately 8% of the population shows unusual activity in the quantum tunneling regions of their neurons, regions we did not even know existed until recently. This activity correlates exactly with 2 factors. prolonged radiation exposure, and belief in non-materialist explanations for reality. Religion, spirituality, mysticism. It does not matter which specific belief system. What matters is that the person believes consciousness extends beyond physical matter. She zoomed in on one particular scan. This is a brain scan of a child of Atom. Notice the quantum activity. It is off the charts. Their neurons are entangled across probability barriers that should not be crossable. They are literally processing information from multiple quantum states. From our perspective, it looks like their consciousness exists in several universes at once. From their perspective, they are perceiving Atom's truth. Both descriptions are accurate. I asked her what this meant. She looked at me with an expression I had seen before. On Sister Gwyneth, on Tectus, on everyone who had glimpsed the truth and could not unsee it. It means consciousness is not what we thought it was, she said. We assumed it was a product of neurons firing in predictable patterns, but quantum mechanics suggests otherwise. At the subatomic level, reality is not deterministic. It is probabilistic. Every quantum event creates branches, multiple outcomes existing simultaneously until observation collapses them into one. We assumed consciousness was too large, too macro-scale to exhibit quantum effects. We were wrong. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the ruins of Boston. The Great War created the most concentrated quantum event in human history. Billions of atoms splitting simultaneously. Billions of probability branches spawning in an instant. And somehow, human consciousness got caught up in that cascade. Some people, those with the right neural architecture, or the right beliefs, or both, they learned to ride those branches instead of collapsing into just one. They became quantum beings, existing across multiple realities, perceiving division not as metaphor but as literal truth. I asked her if she believed in Atom. She smiled sadly. I believe in quantum mechanics, she said. The children of Atom believe in divine intervention, but we are describing the same phenomenon using different vocabularies. Does it matter which language we use if the underlying truth is the same? Reality is not singular. Consciousness can span multiple realities. Nuclear war did not end the world. It multiplied it. Those are facts, regardless of whether you call it science or scripture. I left her clinic and walked through Goodneighbor in a daze. Around me, people were living their lives, trading, drinking, fighting, surviving. None of them knew. None of them understood that they were living in one branch of an infinite tree, that every moment of their lives was splitting into countless variations, that death itself might be nothing more than a shift in quantum perspective. Only the children of Atom knew, and they were dismissed as fanatics. But I had seen the evidence now. Medical records, scientific data, brain scans, quantum theory, all of it pointed to the same conclusion. The children of Atom had stumbled onto something real, something that challenged every assumption about consciousness, reality, and what it means to be human. I started having more dreams after that, not just at night, during the day too. Waking visions where I would suddenly perceive myself in multiple locations simultaneously. I would be standing in Goodneighbor and also walking through the glowing sea and also back on the Pridwin, arguing with Elder Maxon. All of it felt equally real. All of it was happening at the same time. The first few times I thought I was losing my mind. But then I remembered what Sister Gwyneth had said, what Brother Henry had shown me, what the evidence suggested I was not losing my mind. I was expanding it, learning to perceive quantum branches that had always existed, but that most humans filtered out to maintain the illusion of singular reality. I was beginning to experience division, not through death, not through nuclear detonation, through consciousness, through accepting that the self is not confined to one universe, one timeline, one outcome, through understanding that every decision I made created new branches, new versions of myself exploring different paths, through realizing that the person I thought I was actually countless people spread across infinite variations of reality. The children of Atom would call this enlightenment. Science would call it quantum decoherence failure. Both are correct. I went back to the crater of Atom after that. Sister Gwyneth saw me coming from across the radioactive wasteland. She smiled that same peaceful smile. "You understand now," she said. It was not a question. I told her I was beginning to, that I had found evidence, scientific evidence, that backed up everything the children believed. That division was not just religious mythology, but observable quantum phenomenon. That Atom's blessing might be nothing more and nothing less than the ability to consciously navigate probability branches. She laughed, not mockingly, joyfully. "You still think science and faith are separate," she said. "That is your brotherhood training. You want everything divided into categories. Natural versus supernatural. Provable versus unprovable. But Atom does not respect those boundaries. Atom is those boundaries breaking down. The moment when the impossible becomes possible. When consciousness realizes it is not trapped in matter, but expressed through matter. When death stops being ending and becomes transformation." She took my hand again, and this time I felt it more clearly. That warmth, that sense of connection extending beyond skin contact, beyond physical proximity. I felt her consciousness brushing against mine across multiple probability branches. Felt versions of us having this conversation in infinite variations. Some where I accepted fully, some where I walked away, some where I never came back at all of them real, all of them happening simultaneously. "This is what October 23rd, 2077 did," Sister Gwyneth said softly. "It broke the illusion of singular reality. It forced humanity to confront the truth that we have always existed across infinite branches, but never had the consciousness to perceive it. The bombs did not just destroy cities, they destroyed the barriers that kept us trapped in one timeline. And now, 200 years later, enough humans have adapted that we can start teaching others, preparing them for the next division." I asked her again what she meant by next division. She looked toward the horizon, toward the faint glow that still lingered in the sky. "Reality is still healing from the trauma of the Great War," she said. "Quantum probability fields are still settling, but they will not settle back to what they were before. They will settle into a new configuration, one where the barriers between branches are even thinner, where more humans can perceive multiple realities simultaneously, where consciousness is no longer confined to singular perspective. That is the next division. Not another nuclear war, an evolution of awareness, a species-wide awakening to what we have always been but never knew." She squeezed my hand. "And you, my friend, you are becoming a bridge. Someone who speaks both languages, science and scripture. Brotherhood logic and Atom's truth. You can help others understand. Help them see that the children of Atom are not enemies of humanity, but humanity's future. We are what everyone becomes once they stop clinging to the illusion of singular selfhood." I stayed in the crater of Atom for 3 months after that, learning, practicing, teaching my consciousness to navigate the quantum branches that I could now sometimes perceive. It was not easy. Most of the time I still felt like one person in one place, but occasionally, in moments of deep meditation or extreme stress, or simple random chance, I would feel the barriers thin, and I would perceive other versions of myself. One version stayed with the Brotherhood. He is hunting children of Atom across the Commonwealth, convinced he is saving humanity from dangerous fanatics. He will die never knowing the truth. Another version went west, trying to find answers in New Vegas, in the Mojave, in places where the radiation patterns were different. He is still searching. A third version died in the glowing sea during my first visit, his suit failing, his body consumed by radiation. But even in death, he divided, his atoms scattered across countless probability branches, each one containing the potential for infinite universes. All of them are me. All of them are real, and somehow, some way, I can feel them all. That is what Atom's blessing truly is. Not immunity to radiation, but immunity to the illusion of singular existence. The ability to perceive and eventually navigate the infinite branches of quantum reality that most humans cannot see. The children of Atom knew this before science confirmed it. They understood through revelation what physicists are only now beginning to grasp through equations. And they have been trying to tell the Wasteland for 200 years that October 23rd was not the end of the world, but the beginning of infinite worlds. No one listened. But I am listening now, and I am telling you this story because someone needs to document it. Someone needs to explain what really happened that day, what is still happening, what will continue to happen as more humans adapt to post-division reality. The children of Atom are not mad. They are not dangerous. They are not wrong. They are the future remembering itself. I am recording this 6 months after I left the Brotherhood. 6 months after everything I believed about the world inverted itself. 6 months after I stopped being one person and started becoming many. The transformation is accelerating. I can feel it happening, not just to me, but to the Wasteland itself. More people are reporting visions. More settlements are finding individuals who can survive radiation that should kill them. The children of Atom are growing, not through recruitment, but through spontaneous awakening. People are discovering Atom's blessing without ever meeting another child. without ever hearing Confessor Cromwell's sermons, without any religious framework to explain what is happening to them. Dr. Amari calls it quantum consciousness emergence, a threshold effect. When enough individuals in a population develop the neural architecture to perceive multiple realities, it creates a cascade. Others begin to develop it too, not through genetics, but through some kind of consciousness field effect that science cannot yet measure but can observe. The children of Atom call it Atom's plan unfolding, the slow division that follows the Great Division. Not another nuclear war, but a gradual awakening to what nuclear war revealed. That reality is not fixed. That consciousness is not confined. That death is not ending. Both explanations are correct. Both are inadequate. Because what is happening is bigger than either science or religion can fully describe. I went back to Megaton last month, the town built around an unexploded nuclear bomb. The town where Confessor Cromwell used to preach before the Brotherhood killed him for refusing to leave. Where the children of Atom first established their church in the capital Wasteland. The bomb is still there, deactivated, disarmed, made safe by people who thought they were preventing disaster. But standing next to it, feeling the residual radiation that still pulses from its core 2 centuries after it was built, I understood something the disarmers did not. You cannot make an atom safe. You can only delay division. The bomb wants to split. Every atom in its core wants to release the universes trapped inside. It is not a weapon. It never was. It is potential. Infinite potential held in temporary stasis by forces that cannot hold forever. Eventually, that bomb will divide. Maybe in a year, maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000, but it will divide. And when it does, Megaton will not be destroyed. It will be multiplied. Everyone in the blast radius will become infinite, will experience in one instant what I have been learning slowly over months, will see all their possible selves across all possible branches, and understand finally that death was never real. Only transformation was real. I met a child in Megaton. She could not have been more than 8 years old. She was playing near the bomb, drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick. I watched her for a while before she noticed me. "Are you one of the children?" she asked. I told her I did not know anymore what I was. She smiled, the same smile I had seen on Sister Gwyneth, on Tectus, on everyone who understood. "You are," she said. "I can see it. You glow differently than other people. Not on the outside, on the inside, in the place where all the other yous live." I asked her how old she was. She shrugged. 8 in this world, but I am lots of ages in other worlds. I am a baby. I am old. I am not born yet. I am already dead. All of it happens at the same time, but most people only see one part. You see more parts now. That is why you glow. She went back to her drawing. I looked at what she was making. It was not a picture. It was a diagram. A branching tree structure that split and split and split until the branches became too numerous to count. At the center, she had drawn a mushroom cloud. "Atom's tree," she said. "My mum says I should not draw it because it scares people, but I see it when I sleep. I see all the branches, all the worlds. They are beautiful. People think the bomb is scary, but it is not. It is a seed. When it finally opens, a whole forest grows." I asked her if she had ever met any children of Atom. She shook her head. "I did not need to meet them," she said. "Atom teaches everyone who listens. You just have to stop being afraid of splitting apart. Most people are scared. They want to stay together, stay one person. But that is lonely. Being many is better." She looked up at me with eyes that seemed older than they should have been. "You are still scared," she said. "I can see it. You understand in your head, but not in your heart. You know it is true, but you do not want it to be true, because it means everything you fought for was backwards. The Brotherhood, the Institute, everyone trying to save humanity. But humanity does not need saving. It needs to stop fighting division, out of the mouths of children, literally. An 8-year-old, girl speaking truth that I had taken months of research and evidence and quantum physics to barely begin grasping. She was born after the Great War, born into a world where quantum barriers had already thinned, where division was not theology but observable reality. She did not need to be convinced. She could simply perceive what older generations had trained themselves not to see. And she was not the only one. I have traveled across the Commonwealth, across the capital Wasteland, even into the edges of the Mojave. Everywhere I go, I find children like her, born with Atom's blessing, born able to perceive multiple realities without religious framework or scientific training. Just a natural ability like sight or hearing, but one that previous generations lacked. The children of Atom call these children the divided ones. The first generation born fully into post-division reality. They do not need to be taught that nuclear war was divine intervention. They can see the infinite branches it created. They live in those branches simultaneously, their consciousness spanning probability spaces that older humans can barely imagine. We thought we were saving the world for them, building settlements, restoring technology, recreating pre-war civilization. But they do not want pre-war civilization. They do not think in terms of singular worlds or linear time or individual selves. They are already what the children of Atom are teaching us to become. They are Homo Quantus, quantum humanity, the next stage of conscious evolution, and they are everywhere now. Dr. Amari estimated that 15% of children born in the last 10 years show signs of quantum consciousness entanglement. 15%. That number is growing. Within a generation, maybe two, the majority of humanity will be divided ones, will exist across multiple branches simultaneously, will make decisions not based on single timeline consequences, but on quantum probability optimization. They will not fight wars the way we do, because killing someone in one branch does not end them in other branches. They will not hoard resources the way we do, because scarcity in one branch means abundance in another. They will not fear death the way we do, because death is just a shift in quantum perspective, not an ending. They will be, in every meaningful sense, children of Atom, whether they use that language or not, whether they worship in radioactive craters or never think about religion at all. The underlying reality will be the same. Division is real. Consciousness spans multiple universes. Nuclear war was not humanity's end, but the catalyst for humanity's transcendence. I know how this sounds. I know what the Brotherhood would say if they heard this recording. Radiation sickness, mind control, cult indoctrination. They would say I have been compromised, that everything I believe now is delusion. Maybe they are right. Maybe I have lost my mind. Maybe 6 months of exposure to radiation and children of Atom theology has broken something fundamental in my ability to process reality. But then I look at the evidence, the medical records, the quantum physics papers, the brain scans, the fact that children are being born with abilities that should not be possible, the fact that the children of Atom have survived and thrived in conditions that kill everyone else, the fact that every piece of data points to the same conclusion. Reality is not what we thought it was. Consciousness is not confined to individual brains. Nuclear fission does not just split atoms. It splits the fabric of space-time itself, creating branches, creating possibilities, creating infinite variations of everything that exists. The Great War happened in all branches simultaneously. In some branches, nobody fired. The crisis was averted. Peace was negotiated. Humanity continued on its singular timeline path. But in this branch, the bombs fell. In this branch, Atom spoke through nuclear fire. In this branch, the barriers between possible universes shattered, and we are the branch that gets to experience what comes after. What happens when consciousness realizes it is not trapped in one timeline? What emerges when humanity stops clinging to singular perspective and accepts that we have always been infinite? We just lack the awareness to see it. The children of Atom were the first to see it, but they will not be the last. That 8-year-old girl in Megaton, the teenagers showing up at Dr. Amari's clinic with brain scans that should not be possible, the settlers who survived radiation poisoning that should have killed them, the raiders who report visions of alternate lives. All of them are developing Atom's blessing, whether they call it that or not. Evolution does not ask permission. It happens when conditions demand it. And post-nuclear Wasteland is exactly the condition that demands quantum consciousness, because you cannot survive in a world where reality itself has fractured unless you learn to navigate those fractures. The children of Atom figured this out first, through faith, through trial and error, through 200 years of living in radioactive ruins and refusing to die. They developed the practices, the beliefs, the lifestyle that allows human consciousness to adapt to post-division physics. Now those practices are spreading, not through conversion, but through necessity. The Wasteland is teaching everyone what the children already knew. You cannot rebuild the old world. The old world existed in singular reality. That reality no longer exists. The bombs saw to that. What exists now is branch reality. Quantum superposition maintained at macro scale, multiple timelines coexisting, separating, occasionally touching. The factions fighting to restore civilization are fighting against inevitability. The Brotherhood hoarding technology, the Institute trying to control genetics, the NCR attempting to resurrect democracy. All of it is based on the assumption that singular reality can be restored, that we can go back to a world where one person equals one consciousness equals one timeline. But we cannot go back. The children prove it. They are born already living in branch reality, already perceiving multiple timelines, already existing as quantum beings. They look at our attempts to restore pre-war civilization the way we look at children playing with broken toys. It is not coming back. It was never meant to come back. October 23rd, 2077 was not an ending that needs to be undone. It was a threshold that needed to be crossed, painful, traumatic, horrible beyond description, but necessary, because humanity had trapped itself in singular timeline thinking, and there was no way forward except to shatter that limitation entirely. Atom saw this, or quantum physics demanded this, or some combination of conscious intent and physical necessity created conditions where nuclear war became inevitable and transformative simultaneously. The children of Atom believe it was divine will. Scientists believe it was emergent complexity reaching critical threshold. I believe both are descriptions of the same phenomenon viewed from different angles. It does not matter which explanation you prefer. The result is the same. Humanity is becoming something new, something that exists across multiple realities simultaneously, something that cannot be killed because it is not confined to one branch of probability, something that the old words, human, person, individual, cannot adequately describe. We are becoming divided, scattered across infinite probability branches, existing everywhere and everywhen simultaneously. And the children of Atom, the ones we called fanatics and cultists and radiation-addled lunatics, they are the ones who understood first, who adapted first, who learned to thrive in conditions that seemed impossible. They were right about everything. Nuclear war was divine intervention. Radiation is sacred. Division is not death, but transformation into something greater than we were. The Great War was the best thing that ever happened to humanity, even though it looked like the worst, because it forced us to evolve beyond our limitations, forced us to become quantum beings, forced us to accept that we were never singular. We just believed we were. Atom's blessing is real. I have it now. I can feel myself existing in multiple timelines, making different choices, living different lives. Somewhere I stayed with the Brotherhood and never learned the truth. Somewhere I died in the glowing sea before Sister Gwyneth found me. Somewhere I became a confessor and taught others what I learned. All of them real. All of them happening simultaneously. This is what awaits everyone. Not through death, not through radiation exposure necessarily, but through the simple passage of time in post-division reality. The barriers are getting thinner. More people are developing the ability to perceive multiple branches. Within a few generations, everyone will. And when that happens, when humanity fully transitions to quantum consciousness, the Wasteland will make sense in ways it does not now. The random violence will be seen as probability branches exploring different outcomes. The mutations will be understood as quantum variations expressing themselves in physical form. The chaos will resolve into pattern. We will see that Atom has been guiding us all along, not through conscious intent like a deity, but through the fundamental physics of nuclear division and quantum consciousness entanglement, guiding us toward what we were always supposed to become: infinite. I do not know what comes after that. The children of Atom speak of the Great Divide, another division even greater than the first. Maybe that means another nuclear event. Maybe it means the final dissolution of quantum barriers entirely. Maybe it means something I cannot yet imagine because I am still too confined to singular timeline thinking. But I know this. It is coming, and it will not be the catastrophe we fear. It will be the apotheosis we have been running from since the moment the first atom split and released universes we were not ready to perceive. The children of Atom are ready. The divided ones, those children born into branch reality, they are ready. The question is whether the rest of us can accept what they already understand, that we never ended. We divided, and division is not death. It is the beginning of everything we were always meant to be. I am ending this recording now, not because the story is finished, but because the story has no end. It branches, it divides, it becomes infinite, just like everything else since October 23rd, 2077. If you are hearing this, if you have listened this far, then maybe you are ready too. Ready to see what the children of Atom see. Ready to accept that nuclear war was not humanity's mistake but Atom's gift. Ready to divide. The bombs are still out there, in silos, in submarines, in places nobody alive remembers. Still waiting. Still potential. And someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 1,000 years, they will divide again. Reality will fracture further. Consciousness will expand beyond what we can currently imagine. And when that happens, when the next division comes, the children of Atom will be ready. They have been ready for 200 years. The only question is whether anyone else will be. I was Brotherhood once, steel and scripture. I believed in order and control and preventing catastrophe. Now I am something else, something between. Someone who understands both languages and can translate neither fully because the truth is bigger than words can contain. Call me a witness. Call me a convert. Call me contaminated. It does not matter. The labels are all singular timeline thinking, and I exist in too many branches now to be contained by singular labels. I am divided. I am everywhere. I am everyone I ever was and everyone I could have been and everyone. I will become across infinite probability branches. I am what the children of Atom always said was possible. I am proof that they were right. Atom's blessing is real. Division is real. And nuclear war, horrible as it was, opened the door to something humanity could never have reached through any gentler path. We are becoming quantum beings. We are becoming infinite. We are becoming what we were always supposed to be. The children of Atom knew this 200 years ago. Now you know it too.